Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Blockchain Economy Summit 2021. This will be our last session of the evening, and it's on FDI and opportunities in FDI through blockchain and tokenization. So we have a very exciting show for you today with a lot of industry leaders, startup founders, and also some government and regulatory authorities as well. So I'd just like to get started by introducing the panel that we have with us today. So with us we have with us we have Mr. Gyanendra Khadka of XcelTrip, CEO and founder. We have Mr. Mujtaba Saptar from IBM. We have also Greg Lee, head of Asia. And I'll let you all introduce yourselves in a second and tell a bit more about yourselves. We've got Greg Lee, who's the head of Asia from Bitfury. Dr. Sebastian Groh, the managing director of SOLshare. Hussein M, Elius, CEO and founder of Pathao. Sharif Zahir, managing director of Ananta Group, and we'll have some others joining us in the program as well. So welcome everyone, thanks for being here today. Let's just get started. You know, I think this is going to be an interesting session because whenever I talk about blockchain, all anyone wants to know is where's the FDI? How are we going to get money out of this? So I think we'll discuss those ideas tonight. And you know, many of you or some of you may feel, and in the audience as well, that you know, I don't know a lot about blockchain. I don't know a lot about tokenization and these technologies. You know what? That's okay. It's a very new technology. I myself knew very little about blockchain, cryptocurrencies, digital assets a year ago. One of those reasons is that in Bangladesh, these cryptocurrencies are restricted, so I never took a real interest. And I think that's unfortunate because I do feel that blockchain and cryptocurrencies and digital assets through tokenization is going to be the big, let's say, internet of value revolution in the next 10 years. So with that, let's get started. I'd like to start by letting everyone introduce themselves. So I think, Gyanendra, why don't we start with you? Can you please tell us about yourself, a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, Namaskar. Thank you so much. My name is Gyanendra Khadka. I'm from Nepal. So I think like we are the neighboring country. And I'm into blockchain and cryptocurrency from the last 7 years and now leading XcelTrip, which is the first crypto-friendly online travel booking platform. Yes, and XcelPay wallet, which is the secure blockchain wallet. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, I would like to hear from Greg. Greg, can you introduce yourself, please?
Sure. Hello, everyone. I'm Greg Lee, the head of Asia Pacific for Bitfury. I'm American, based in Singapore, and Bitfury is one of the leading emergent technology companies, particularly focused on blockchain and data centers and transaction processing. So thank you very much, Misha, for having me on this panel.
Thank you for being here. Sebastian, why don't we go with you next, if you can tell us a little bit about yourself. Sebastian, I believe you're on mute. Sebastian seems to not be able to hear us. Elias, why don't you introduce yourself, although you probably don't need much introduction in this.
Yeah, sure. I'll just introduce myself briefly. Hi, everyone. I'm Hussein M. Elius. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Pathao. Pathao is the largest...
Sebastian, managing director and founder of SOLshare.
Yeah.
Sorry about that. It looks like our lines got crossed. Go ahead, Elias, finish up.
Yeah, so Pathao is one of the largest consumer apps in Bangladesh. We do everything from ride sharing, food delivery, e-commerce logistics, and more. We have 13 total different services and increasing them more every day.
And Sebastian, can you redo your introduction, please?
Yeah, sorry, we had a little bit of a time lag here in the. Sorry about that. This is Sebastian, managing director and founder of SOLshare. We are an energy service platform. We built the first peer-to-peer electricity trading grid in the world here in Bangladesh.
Great, thanks. Sharif, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yes, I'm the managing director of Ananta Apparels. We are primarily in RMG sector. We own several factories and we export to the major retailers. I've also been involved. I've been the vice chairman of UCB Bank, National Finance, and also an asset management company.
Thank you. And finally, Mrs. Rubana Huq, please.
I mean, frankly, I didn't hear any of the introductions, and I just heard stuttering. I'm Rubana Huq. I'm engaged in different sectors, but primarily we started off with the ready-made garment sector, and then we diversified into real estate, power, energy, and also media. That's about it about me.
Thank you. Thank you. So let's just get into it. I think one of the interesting parts about infrastructure financing that I've seen is that there's going to be a $15 trillion infrastructure financing gap. And I mentioned this this morning. $15 trillion till now and 2040 is the infrastructure financing gap between what we need for all of the infrastructure projects and what we're actually going to get. And most of this effect will be felt in developing countries like Bangladesh. Today, only 0.67% of infrastructure financing comes from private sources. The rest, over 99%, is from the public sector. So today we want to talk about how blockchain technologies can close that gap. That'll be one of the things that we'll talk about. We also want to talk about other opportunities for FDI through blockchain technologies. And I think we'll also talk about how the startup ecosphere can benefit from blockchain and tokenization. So Sebastian, you and I have been speaking about tokenization for a few days now. Can you explain to us the idea of what exactly is tokenization? Because I think a lot of people in the audience would like to know that. Sorry, it seems Sebastian is on a bit of a delay. So anyone else want to take a stab at explaining tokenization? Elius, perhaps?
Sure, I'll take a stab at it, but I think, Misha, correct me if I veer too much off. So my understanding about tokenization is basically turning a physical asset, right, and basically taking it apart and converting it into a digital asset, right, or a version of it, right? So a good example could be, let's say, someone who owns a farm, let's say, right? And if a farm itself is, of course, a physical asset, but through the process of tokenization, what one can do is, let's say, the farm is generating a certain amount of revenue, and I can then the token can be split into different parts. Anyone can buy, let's say, a quarter of the farm or a tenth of the farm, let's say, and they can then earn revenue based on how well the farm is doing, right? So what it is, it's basically just a representation of a physical asset in the digital form, and it allows anyone to buy or trade part of the asset, right?
Thank you. That's a very
in a very simple word, tokenization is digitization of any physical assets that you have. Yeah. It means like you can tokenize anything you have, anything you want. Yeah.
So tell us more, Gyanendra. How can tokenization be used in the real world? And let's say for what are some real world applications of tokenization that you can think of or that you have experience with?
Yeah, so since like most of the speakers have already talked a lot about tokenizations, right? From the last many hours, right? Since this morning, actually like tokenization plays very vital role, yes, including FDI to infrastructure development, right? In every countries, because tokenization, yes, is the key of infrastructure development because it plays very vital roles, yes, in every infrastructure sectors, like you can call it like energy, power, right? Maybe like transportation, right? Any farmings, yes, anything. Sure, tokenization is the future of FDI, yes, and infrastructure development in every country.
If I could jump in, Misha, and give an example.
Yeah, sure.
So, I don't know if in your country, but let's say you own a property, and you want to buy a farm, or you want to buy a flat. Usually, the process is quite long because you have to verify who really owns it. The bank needs to verify you have the funds. Then you have to get a loan, and then the lawyers get involved. But by tokenizing the property and digitizing it, you can automate and verify a lot of these transactions, and also for proof. So, and regarding blockchain itself, you can put the ownership of that property permanently on a digital ledger. So that means in terms of, let's say I have a nice piece of property, and in some countries it's very easy to change the land ownership to give it to someone else. This way, the digital certificate or digital token of the ownership of the property, no one can ever take it away from you. So in terms of verification or anti-corruption or things like that, that's a benefit. Second, in terms of being able to trade it and sell it in a much more frictionless environment and not having to wait, say, 4 months or 6 months for a real estate transaction to go through, that's possible. So Bitfury worked with the government of the Republic of Georgia in Central Asia, Central Europe, and put their land use rights on blockchain. So that's one real example. And there's other countries looking at that and doing other types of goods and services. But if you imagine if your land ownership certificate is not a piece of paper that you put in the safe or that you put under your in your room, but it's actually a digital piece that you can take and send to people and trade with people. So that's just an example for the audience there. Thank you.
Thank you. Sharif, I think this brings us to something very similar that we were talking about earlier today. So why don't you add something here?
No, I'll just share my realistic experience, actually. So we've been trying to launch this project. We're working with IFC for that. It's a first mixed-use real estate project in Bangladesh. So, I mean, it's the same experience. Like, if I see the number of times the land documents got vetted, it's just endless. So one is like, you work with IFC and it's a very, it takes a lot of time. So the data is like, often needs to be refreshed. So, we have to go through the lawyer for that. They had to vet the land documents twice. And then, like, when it came to the hotel operator, for example, Marriott, they had to, engage another set of lawyer to just, go through the same documents. So I mean, what the other speaker was saying, through this, if it's digitally, like, encrypted and the information is, verified and put there, obviously, like, you can shorten the process quite a bit. The whole idea of, tokenization, it's, I mean, I've been doing some reading actually recently, and it's very exciting actually. I mean, traditionally, like, if you see the real estate sector, it's very illiquid, right? And when you try to do a project, especially in a country like Bangladesh, you only, for financing, you end up going to the banks. Either you pre-sale or you go to the banks. And the banks, in Bangladesh, I mean, over the years, we've only come up with financing debt. I mean, it's the only product is debt, basically. And it's the usual, like, 9% or whatever the market rate is. You go to the bank and, you mortgage the property and you borrow. So it's very traditional and it's very limited choice, basically. But if you really look, like, at a real estate, the risks associated with a greenfield project, or when you come up with a new project, I mean, financing the project with pure debt is very risky. So we do need to, reach out to alternate sources. And so when I'm reading, these new technologies, what it can do, breaking up the asset into pieces and, like, giving that access of financing to individuals whether it's institutions or individual investors investing, it really opens up the door to do a lot of things basically. So I think it's very exciting. The technology part, obviously, like Misha, you guys have to deal with it, but definitely, like just from reading the documents from yesterday, I called up a few friends in the banking sector and who are dealing with asset management and other trying to come up with bonds and new products. I've already spoken to them, and we will try to figure out some ways of financing real estate projects through tokenization.
Thanks for that, Sharif. Very interesting. So, Rubana, if you can add something here. You are also in real estate and also in the power sector as well. What do you think are some of the major challenges of bringing foreign FDI into Bangladesh today?
FDI has been a challenge so far. Apart from the Akij one, the Japanese one, Bangladesh really hasn't been able to attract FDI because FDI, as we all know, is an act of faith. And we could blame our poor infrastructure for it. We could talk about the unpredictability in rules and regulations. We can talk about our stronger currency, which has a negative correlation. We can talk about the complexities in bureaucratic procedures. We can talk about non-availability of land. We can talk about higher concentrations on few sectors. And, we haven't been able to diversify yet. But if we want to bring in even FDI for even ready-made garment sector, in that case, tokenization can be a great concept because it does allow fractional ownership. So be it real estate or energy or even just our ready-made garment industry where we need a lot of backward linkage, tokenization can help. So tokenization is just not limited to real estate. Also at the same time, we haven't been able to also innovate. Therefore, as it is because of COVID, the appetite for FDI is just not there. Everything's so virtual, nobody really wants to invest anymore. So we have to also understand that we don't have that global appetite because global FDI has also been going down to a considerable extent. And also because we haven't had much innovation and we haven't done enough investment in human capital, and because of the absence of aggressive commercial diplomacy in the country, and because there is also a discrimination between national and foreign investments, automatically we kind of frustrate investors. And also at the same time, we don't have, we cannot resolve insolvency and we don't have appropriate exit policy. So these hinder FDI, and also at the same time, the banking sector transparency is also key to hindrance of FDI. So we need to work on multiple issues. And if we really talk about way forward, Misha, I can only say that, we can think about 3 ways of foreign investors to engage. One is, of course, through investments, trade. Another is technology transfer, and the other is market access. So if we take all that into consideration, we may have some, at least, breakthrough. In ready-made, in of course, real estate, as Sharif said, tokenization would be a great breakthrough because, there is an emerging middle class and many of them can't even afford big spaces. So the challenge is in documentation. In Mandhattar Amole, documentation will probably, have a setback on the concept, but, UAE has already started it, and blockchain has played an enormous role in actually basically bringing real estate into fractional ownership in UAE, which has already started. So I think what is needed at this point is for us to be technology forward. And even in ready-made garment sector, Misha, what we once planned, and Sharif was with me on that board, we planned on an e-wallet, which would basically have all the data of all the ready-made garment workers under one wing. And, that is where blockchain comes in. And we could have all the data of all the workers, including health data, their expenses, their habits, and everything under one database. And that would perhaps give us the breakthrough, and we could think about a cashless economy and start piloting with the ready-made garment worker. So I'm hoping that with the ICT Ministry's IDTP platform, which is now being implemented, hopefully, we should all be, and that is blockchain. So we have also signed up, and we have said that we want to pay our workers digitally and have all the data, because there is a privacy issue as well. But it's easy for our sector because the workers actually are not very mindful about their privacy. So we could play around with that and also implement a lot of, blockchain substantially in ready-made garment sector as well. Thank you.
Thank you for those comments. So Sebastian, I'm sorry we got cut off earlier because of your connection. How is that connection doing now? Should we give it another shot?
You tell me. Are you hearing me better?
Yeah, I think this is better. So I think, Sebastian, you've actually done some work, or we've been talking about some pilot projects in the renewables sector with tokenization. Can you tell us some of the applications of this technology in SOLshare particularly, and where you're thinking of going with this in the next couple of years?
Yeah, right. I mean, the question when we talk about tokenization or all these tools, tokenization has been around for a long time, right? It's just that through blockchain, it gets, let's say, a little bit more elegant, a little bit more feasible, a little bit more efficient, and we can add certain elements which may give more credibility to investors and or assurances how you use funds, because you can follow it and you can authenticate it. In terms of renewable energies, what we were thinking in terms of FDI, and in our case, it was at the early stage, it was the investment would be basically a donation. We had developed what we called a SOL token, which basically meant if someone in Europe saved electricity through an energy efficiency measure, which is usually the least sexy measure because energy efficiency, it's not like a shiny panel on the roof, that you could basically make it more attractive in the sales process. When you would say, okay, look, if you save that many kilowatt hours in a year, a fraction of that could then be automatically put onto a meter of a remote village community. And then the European or US consumer would actually realize that only a fraction of his savings can power an entire household, which makes this whole electricity a little bit more tangible. It was a beautiful idea until we told the Bangladesh bank about it. They didn't think it's so beautiful because it immediately went under terrorism, financing suspicion or whatnot. So we didn't get too far with it. We have it programmed, it's all ready. So on your mark, Misha, as soon as I think we have a little bit more of a friendly regulatory framework, we can actually put it into action. And that's a tiny example. I think what is more interesting now with all the recovery, we always talk about the green recovery of COVID-19. Usually the usual suspect is infrastructure for recovery, right? That's very popular. So the question is, can we do it a green infrastructure? And the question is how tokenization could help for this. And I think the most important thing here, except for what we already spoke about, the fractional ownership and the proof of ownership, is that you can actually earmark or pre-code certain activities. Let's say SOLshare claims we can put in 1 megawatt hour per day from very dispersed solar home systems into the grid. And someone says, I don't really believe that. Then you can basically code a contract, would call it a smart contract then, and say, okay, look, whenever they fed 1 megawatt hour, automatically a payment is triggered. So that nobody needs to stand there. You basically have your IoT sensor at the point where you feed into the grid, and it's all automated. So it becomes trustful and it becomes extremely efficient, simply. So just as examples on the renewable energy, and I think since so many representatives here from the garment sector, one could think about similar things on the rooftop solar space there as well.
Great. Thanks so much, Sebastian. Let's take a step back and talk about something a little bit different. So, Gyanendra, I noticed that you actually have a decentralized travel website. Can you tell us a little bit about that? And then maybe we'll cover how decentralized apps are going to change the face of, let's say, existing industries such as ride sharing. Elias, I'm looking at you, and maybe you can comment on that afterwards. So go ahead, Gyanendra. You're on mute.
Yeah, thank you, Misha. Actually, like I started XcelTrip, which is XcelTrip.com, XcelTrip, and we also have like mobile applications available. So we have 2.3 million hotels and 450 airlines worldwide, and we were the first to integrate cryptocurrency payment on the travel platform. Actually, I used to use Expedia for hotel booking since 2014, but since Expedia stopped accepting Bitcoin for hotel booking back in 17, right? So there used to be very little like travel booking platform such as like Cheap Air, and Bitcoin Travel or something like that, right? And they were not doing like they are not doing well, and we were the first to introduce like a major cryptocurrency for the booking platform, and we are doing pretty well right now. Actually, the thing is like people can actually pay for hotel and flight booking with Bitcoin, like Ethereum, Litecoin, Dash, and we do have our one token, XCel token, which is the utility token, right? But there is problem about the settlement to the hotels and airlines. Due to the settlement issue, Expedia stopped accepting like a cryptocurrency in their platform, right? And we're doing pretty well. And actually, like we are not the first like blockchain based. We are the crypto friendly travel platform, right? Travel platform. And I built XcelPay wallet, which is fully decentralized like blockchain wallet, right? Where you can send, receive, store. We have also integrated mobile top up and gift card purchase. You can actually spend with Bitcoin or use our token, right? And top up mobile phone across 900 telecom operators worldwide and buy 350 gift cards, which is available.
So follow-up question for you, Gyanendra. Is your target market Nepal? And if so, what are the regulatory, right now, the regulatory environment for crypto in Nepal? If you could tell us a little bit about that.
Okay, cryptocurrency is actually like completely banned in Nepal from the last 3 or 4 years, right? So we are not targeting Nepal market. So XcelTrip is the global travel booking platform, and we don't accept any like fiat currencies for hotel booking or flight booking. It means we are not operating our business in Nepal. But I'm from Nepal, right? That is the reason. That is the reason. Like in 2019, when I came back to Nepal, I started my own travel startup, which is called like XcelTrip Nepal, and I'm accepting local payment, like entire like digital wallets, or people can use their bank cards, and I was the first platform to accept like global and Nepal bankers, including all digital wallets to book hotel and flight across the globe. We are not allowed to use our currency or our bank cards to book hotel and flights or to purchase anything we want. And even like we do have bank cards in Nepal, but that works only inside the Nepal and India. If I carry my bank card, Nepal bank card, and I travel to Singapore, it doesn't work. I travel to Malaysia or Bangladesh, it doesn't work, right? It works only within Nepal and India, right? And there is a limitation of withdrawal and the payment. And now Nepali people can actually use our Nepali platform, which is the travel, like startup in Nepal, and book over 2.3 million hotel and 450 airlines, including domestic, like travel booking. We have over 1,000 hotels and integrated all 5 domestic like airlines in Nepal. So it actually like cryptocurrency and blockchain is not allowed in Nepal. That's the reason bringing FDI through blockchain plays a very vital role in the infrastructure development, right? But it's before we talk about all about tokenization or digitization, government should be ready to regulate it, right? Sure. And since I'm in Nepal right now, and I launched my another company, e-commerce platform Gapo. Yes. So I'm not doing any cryptocurrency and blockchain movement in Nepal right now. Completely running my travel and e-commerce platform. Yes, but running my entire XcelPay wallet. I do have my trading platform, Excel Token Exchange. Yes, like XcelPay PV payment gateway for cryptocurrency. Yes, and XcelTrip platform. My entire 4-5 project is working perfectly fine outside Nepal.
Great. So thank you, Elias. I think we've talked about
Yeah.
regulation for decentralized finance, digital assets,
Yeah.
and we've also talked about what we've had a very successful year in Bangladesh as far as startup financing, right? We've already raised over $35 million, I think, which was more than the total last year for startup financing. But you and I were talking about what's going on in the DeFi and the crypto space outside Bangladesh with startup
Yeah.
financing, project financing. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. First of all, Gyanendra, as I listen to you, it's very interesting that, even though you are in Nepal physically, you were able to build a business in the crypto space, which is not in Nepal. And that's a very good example of how countries are also losing out on the access to not just access to not just financing or but also talent, right? I was talking with a lot of other, let's say, blockchain developers in Bangladesh, and one of the things that they keep telling me is that, bhai, there isn't enough blockchain developers, enough good blockchain developers in Bangladesh, right? And I asked them, okay, what is an average salary of a blockchain developer in Bangladesh? Where can I find cheaper people, etc., right? And turns out that you can find Nigerian developers at half the price that you can find a Bangladeshi blockchain developer, right? Why is that? It's because in Nigeria, crypto is legal. So what people do, and especially like young people, a lot of programmers are self-taught programmers, right? So they kind of at first they go into that crypto space at first, and then they get excited by not just the financial impact, but by the technology of it, and then they start developing over there. You don't have that in Bangladesh. Even if you just talk about, you have to be very careful how you talk about crypto and blockchain in a country like Bangladesh, where, as I think Sebastian was saying, right? If you even propose something which is a little innovative, right, you get bucketed under terrorist financing, right? Well, in reality, I have a map of which countries is blockchain legal, sorry, crypto is legal in. And apart from, I think, 5 or 6 which are hostile, Bangladesh is one of them, Nepal is actually one of them, right? Apart from 5 or 6 countries, most countries have a varied level of regulatory acceptance, both on the decentralized finance aspect, on crypto aspect, and blockchain aspect, right? So just wanted to get that out of my system first, that even before apps, you need talent, right? And you cannot really have talent without, opening up the market. If you keep the market like stuck in limbo, there is going to be a lot of innovation that is going to happen outside of Bangladesh. And people who are smarter, they're just going to move out or work outside, but the country itself is not going to see it, right? Gyanendra's example is a good example, right? He built a great business from, but the Nepal, he cannot bring that currency into the Nepalese ecosystem. There is a lot of development that is also happening in Bangladesh, right? But that is never going to come into Bangladesh. There's talent over here, but people are not going to work on it, right? So that's one. To answer your question, Misha, on the decentralized apps aspect, right? I have a chart in front of me which says that the DeFi ecosystem increased by 100x, more than 100x, just last year, right? It went from virtually non-existent to over $100 billion in a year, right? And it's not going to slow down. Unfortunately, and as Bangladesh, like, we cannot take part on it, right? We cannot even hold any of these currencies. And the more the time that passes, we are just going to get poorer in terms of that, hey, you cannot take part of that growing ecosystem. You cannot take part in crypto. You cannot take part in DeFi. Other countries, let's say India, right, which is a neighboring country, they have it regulated, right? They have their own challenges, but they have it regulated. They are taking part of it. There is one of the largest crypto exchanges, WazirX, is in India, right?
And they're doing $2 billion in trading every month right now, just that one exchange. So just imagine the taxable income.
Yeah. So unless we figure out a way to legalize it and regulate it, right, our talent is not going to get developed, right? Forget funding, right? Number one, our talent is not going to get developed. The world will pass us by. We often talk about, the demographic divide. We often talk about how, technology has an ability to leapfrog, right? How, mobile phones have given Bangladeshi consumers an ability to participate in mobile financing, as an example. I often talk about it in other panels. But as long as we keep this legal, what's going to happen is there is going to be leapfrogging of other countries, and we are not going to take part of it. We're going to get poorer. So I think that's a challenge, and I think regulators need to understand that it's nuanced. We cannot just bucket it under, hey, we will not take part in it and just say, oh, forget about it. We need to think more broadly about being a part of the revolution that's happening. It's happening with or without us. But right now, it's without us.
Great. Yeah. Thanks for that. So, Greg, I wanted to bring your perspective in. As someone who's worked with in China, where the Chinese government has a very, I think, love-hate relationship with digital assets and cryptocurrencies, what do you think? What is your view of what Bangladesh can do? What are the opportunities presented for either through mining or through other digital assets?
Sure. So let me take this from a sort of more technology infrastructure perspective. So one of the things that our company does is mining. So I think mining, there's a big misnomer out there. It's more of a media term. Mining is actually transaction processing. So maybe if I could take 10 steps back and explain a little bit how mining and blockchain works for the audience and the other folks here listening. Essentially, you may have heard of Satoshi Nakamoto. About 10 years ago, came up with an idea about Bitcoin blockchain. And basically, the internet as we know it today is meant to transfer digital information. I can send a photo to Misha, Misha can send an email to Elius, and Elius can send a chat to Sharif. But that's digital information. The internet was never really meant for end-to-end secure transactions. So banks are getting hacked, governments are getting hacked, military is getting hacked, because the internet is piecemeal of all these different technologies put together. So along comes Satoshi Nakamoto and whoever it is or a group of people and says, look, I'm going to build a whole new system. From the ground up is meant for secure end-to-end transactions. And it's meant to be based upon mathematics. So you may have heard of cryptography and SHA 256, but without getting into details, essentially, if I'm on one end of the transaction and Misha's on the other end of the transaction, I have a mathematical equation. On his end is a mathematical equation. If the mathematical equations match, then the transaction goes through. So in the traditional world, if I'm sending $100 from Singapore to Bangladesh to Misha, I either go through MoneyGram or a bank. And the bank will say, okay, are you Greg Lee? Here's my passport, here's my address, here's my phone number, and I'm sending $100. On the other end, Misha goes to the bank or MoneyGram, he has to prove his ID and everything like that. And for that service, the bank charges me $25 US and it takes 3 days. But why? It's because they're the trusted third party in the middle verifying both ends. But in the blockchain world, mathematics is what verifies the end. the transactions on both ends. So where does mining come in, or where does transaction processing come in? This, instead of the bank in the middle, it's actually a puzzle where the computer verifies a transaction. And the computer is actually, that's mining. So the miners are actually transaction processors, and they get a reward for verifying the transaction going from Greg to Misha. So here I throw a question out to the audience and to think about is, well, why do they call it blockchain? You know, it's a very interesting term. I never knew what it meant until I really understood from an infrastructure point of view why we call it blockchain. Because in the Bitcoin space, every 10 minutes, there's a block of information of all the transactions that happen in the world. Maybe amongst the 7 of us here or the people in the audience, that's all packed into one block. And the miner or the transaction processor has to calculate all the different equations happening and verifying that block. And that's a reward that the miner or the transaction processor gets. That block is attached to the chain of the previous blocks. And every 10 minutes, there's a new block attached to the chain, hence the term blockchain. That's just a little trivia thing for some people out there. So going back to Misha's original question about how, you know, what can be an interesting perspective for Bangladesh to consider and foreign direct investment and using blockchain technology is, I understand that Bangladesh has a surplus of energy, and to think about using energy in Bangladesh and becoming a major global transaction processing center for securing the transactions occurring on the blockchain. Now, this is pretty unique because this can be a very niche area for Bangladesh to focus on. First, using surplus energy. Second, promoting blockchain technology in the country. Third, creating new jobs. And then fourth, getting foreign investment for companies that would like to place or work together with Bangladeshi companies to create data centers that do this type of transaction processing for the global blockchain economy. Now, interestingly, in China, just the past week in the news, the government the Chinese government will be cracking down on transaction processing and mining in China for various reasons. This is a unique opportunity in the blockchain space for Bangladesh to take advantage of. To say, hey, China currently is about 60 to 70% of the world's transaction processing for cryptocurrencies. This can happen, and a large portion of that could migrate to Bangladesh during this new strategic change shift in the entire blockchain ecosystem. So I leave those thoughts with you and happy to answer questions. And by the way, with the transaction processing of the blockchain, depending on the laws that Elius was speaking about and the other speakers in Bangladesh, the reward for cryptocurrency does not have to happen on shore. So this is how other countries with other regulations do that. And the last thing I'd like to point out, if environmental is a concern, I understand there's a lot of gas energy, which is considered clean energy, but if there's even further concern about carbon emissions, there are ways to offset that, either through carbon credits, or there's a particular program that my company has worked with, the United Nations Development Program in Kazakhstan, to offset specific green energy, carbon emissions with green programs specifically in that country, and that's verified by the UNDP. So just some thoughts there for you from a technology infrastructure point of view, and I think Bangladesh is in a very unique and special opportunity to take advantage of what's happening in the blockchain space. Thank you, Misha.
Thank you, Greg.
And I'll add on here. Yeah, let me share something here. And Greg is absolutely right, because crypto mining is the future of Bangladesh economy. Because if Bangladesh regulators, want to invite miners, global miners, they can actually attract hundreds of $1 billion. That will create hundreds of thousand jobs in Bangladesh. And tokenization is actually environmentally free. right? And it's supposed climate change. There are tens of billion trees, yes, in Bangladesh, right? That can be, each one of them can be tokenized, right? There is an app behind Elius, right? That can be tokenized as an NFT, right? It means, right? So I know like mining is not environmentally okay, right? The way Elon Musk is talking. But if Bangladesh government is ready to, right, ready to create jobs, ready to attract hundreds of $billion, yes, there are miners sitting right there in China right now, right? Chinese governments are trying to ban, right, and shut down the miners. Bangladeshi government, it can actually, yes, talk to those miners, right? Yes, attract those miners from North America to China, yes, and attract hundreds of $billion. Yes.
Thank you for that. Thank you. Rubana, I just want to, or Sharif, as representatives of the garment industry, another industry that has, basically outsourced from China or taken China's dominance in the garments field to Bangladesh. How do you feel about what Greg and Gyanendra are talking about? Do you think that there is a future for such a thing? Do you think that our regulations can be changed, or any thoughts on that?
I mean, Sharif can take this as well. I think we're talking about major mindsets here. So it's, it's going to be pretty difficult for, I mean, even for very obvious changes that we request to the government or the policymakers, it becomes increasingly difficult to change anything. So it's not, crypto is not going to be easy for Bangladesh. And and also for blockchain developers, the lack of technology or investment in technology or in people is still plaguing our landscape. So it's very difficult at this point of time. But then again, we do want, I can kind of hear everyone talking in their own languages, but there's no cohesive vision as yet. So if you really want to take this to the next level, you need, a like-minded group so that everything is interdisciplinary today. So while we talk about tokenization, while we talk about crypto, while we talk about blockchain, let's all sit together and find a common space where all our interests align, because because tokenization and crypto and blockchain, all of these concepts need to be incentivized, and unless we see benefit in it, it doesn't help, because somebody was talking about surplus energy. Yes, I mean, of course, that is an area that would help. Of course, circularity, any kind of investment in circularity would help. I think Sebastian was trying to talk about solar rooftop panels, in which we have already signed an agreement with the Bangladesh government, our association, BGMEA. And I don't know how tokenization can be linked to that. Maybe he would be able to explain better. But there are lots of opportunities, and there are lots of ways that we can actually align all our interests and find a common way, because most of us are in different sectors. And I'm sure there can be a unified vision in terms of blockchain and tokenization. Thank you. Maybe Sharif can take it further.
Yeah, Sharif, please.
See, for me, what I think is when a country is growing at this rate of 7 to 8% or whatever the figure is, I mean, nothing is a surplus actually. I mean, today we might. I mean, just a few years back we were shortage of power. It's just that recently, we have come up with more power plants, and but it's a very temporary thing, because the distribution, Rubana was saying, is it's still not built. But the moment the distribution is built properly, the power usage is again going to be there's going to be shortage. So right now what we need is manufacturing, we need employment. So it has to be in productive sectors. I mean, crypto is definitely probably not in the priority list of the government. And we are also in a list in a WhatsApp group with some policymakers and some economists, and I can see the mindset is still not ready actually. I mean, and I think, to be fair to them, I think with all the volatilities and what's happening in the crypto world, it's probably like we are still not sure how to go about it. What's exciting to me is how to link that. We need to basically again on the financing side, we need to open up our economy basically. So we need to come up with new ways of getting finances from abroad. It's a real pity that if you really look at alternate financing, like be it private equity, venture capitalist, there are hardly any foreign company which are existing in Bangladesh actually. So there is a lot to do. I mean, if you just look at India versus where we are, the numbers are really very upsetting actually. So I know a lot of this private equity, the investment banks are looking for new markets, are looking for new opportunities, and it's just little bit changes in the policy that we need to make to bring in all these investments. And again, I think blockchain, looking at the technology from what we've been reading, what we've been learning, there is tremendous opportunity actually to link a lot of these projects, a lot of these infrastructure projects into into the foreign investors. So we'll have to look at now. Obviously, I'm not the expert, but from what I hear talking to policymakers or the friends that we have, definitely crypto, the currency part would not be that exciting at the moment. There's a lot of fear, a lot of uncertainties in those, but I think we have to bring in other avenues. So again, when I was talking to you guys, Misha, Fasset, and Rafi, and what you guys are doing, again, putting a security behind the crypto. Those are things that you would probably be able to convince the regulators more, how to make it more stable, how to contribute to more infrastructure or productive related sectors. So that's what we need to kind of highlight and excite the people actually who are deciding on these things, that it can be a secured way, and it's not only the cryptocurrencies that we talk about. It can support our growth model basically. So we really need to promote it in a different way.
Great, thanks for those very I think honest words, Sharif. I'd just like to get, at the interest of wrapping up on time and letting people go, I'd just like to get last thoughts from everyone. Let's start with Sebastian. Can you give us any final thoughts on the conversation at hand?
Well, there were so many issues, and I think a little bit also convoluted. But as I'm always with Sharif here, we shouldn't mix up generation capacity and security of supply, right? So we're right. I mean, the surplus was immense, and not because of COVID. It was even before COVID. So it's been going on for a couple of years now. It's been 40% utilization factor, and then it went down to 35. And the projection right now actually is that it's even getting worse, given the plans we have in the in adding generation. So one has to see if distribution improves. What Sharif meant, that how much the capacity factor would go up. But I think still what Greg is suggesting is an interesting opportunity if we kept it decentralized, because the distribution network is so bad. So we would basically put the miners into a whatever special economic zone and generate the electricity there, and ideally renewable, because sorry, but I beg to differ again. Gas is not clean for me. It's so basically we would be feeding in 97% fossil fuels here in Bangladesh. So I think that wouldn't be a very strong proposition, even if we were offsetting it through some. Better is if we generated it clean from the start, but then it should definitely be decentralized. And maybe just one more second, Misha, if I may, because Rubana was asking. What I meant with the tokenization basically is when we talk about garments, we always look about capex and opex, and it's always okay, who takes the burden of the money, and there's very little offer for opex so far. Capex is quite abundant. If we were to tokenize it, we could even think about why can't we have this fractional of ownership through an FDI where this is automated. I think the only fact where it's hindering is the security of payment from the garments itself. So how secure, if I sign a PPA with you over 15 years, what is the assurance for me that 10 years down the line, you're still in business and will honor that PPA? And I think the same question would be with the fractional ownership. So it wouldn't solve that problem per se, but it would definitely solve CapEx versus OpEx, or we could actually go into a hybrid model there with a fractionalized, or everybody owns a little bit and earns from the energy which is sold either to your garment factory or fed into the grid. Closing here.
Great.
Sorry.
Thank you, Sebastian. Rubana, I know you have to go. Any final thoughts from your side?
No, I think we've said enough. Let's just tie our thoughts up. I think that would be better actually.
Great.
Going forward.
Anyone else have any final things to say before we close the session for the evening?
Sure, I have one quick thought. Oh, sorry, Gyanendra. But just to think about as the Bangladesh government and business leaders think about how to embrace blockchain and perhaps cryptocurrency in the future, as other economies such as China, perhaps Europe, and other countries are developing central bank digital currencies and blockchain technologies for their economies, how will Bangladesh in the future link up with trade and settlement and things like that if the other economies are moving towards digital? I think that's something to keep in mind. And then the one last thought is, I hear about fear about cryptocurrency and terrorism and money laundering. If you're a criminal, actually the last thing you want to use is digital currency because it can be traced now. What can't be traced is cash. So there are technologies out there. Our company does have one that law enforcement and governments are using to trace digital currencies, the origin and where they're going. So, but think about the future and how Bangladesh can hook up with other economies and trade. So thank you very much for the opportunity to speak with you today.
Thank you, Greg, for those really amazing thoughts. Thanks. Elias, I know you wanted to say something.
Yeah, I'll just add some final thoughts. There's definitely some interesting applications of blockchain in Bangladesh, without connecting with the outside world, right? So two factors. Other two things, right? One is I think agree with Greg that the idea of terrorist financing through anything like Bitcoin is kind of moot, because we always forget that cryptocurrencies are in a public ledger, which means anyone can just follow that currency and the transaction history, right? So it's actually, just because it's distributed doesn't mean it's anonymous, right? It's actually in the public ledger. Anyone can go to blockchain.com and look up a transaction and follow that history. And the second part is that I agree that the regulatory environment right now probably won't support legalizing cryptocurrencies. Although there is, we had a couple of days ago, we had a national blockchain summit, and there was a lot of good blockchain developers. But at the same time, it would be like comparing intranet versus internet, right? You can develop whatever you want over here, but if you're not connected with the outside world, well, you're not connected. You're building a closed garden, and I don't know if building a closed garden in an emerging country like Bangladesh is a good idea. So yeah, those are my last two thoughts.
And thank you. I think that's a very interesting way to look at it. And we've been building closed gardens in Bangladesh for a long time, if you think about it. So finally, Gyanendra, any last thoughts from your side before we close off for the evening?
Yes, because what I believe is country like Bangladesh and Nepal should embrace this energy investment, because I know there is shortage of energy distribution in these two countries, right? But yes, if government is open, yes, they can actually invite new investment for the new plants, right? So this will create more jobs, and this will actually bring billions of dollars. Miners have money sitting, billions of dollars in their wallet, and they are ready to invest in the new plant. Yes, and Bangladesh and Nepal has that opportunity, number one. And I'm being very blunt. cryptocurrency was not created by the government. It was created by the people and for the people. And I believe it will take some time. Government will take some time to regulate it. But if they are not smart enough, they are not going anywhere. So countries like Nepal and Bangladesh, they need to be very smart. Yes. And for us to accept, regulate this, the next internet of technology. If they are not doing anything for the future of their economy and people, they are not going anywhere.
Thank you very much, Gyanendra. I think that was a good end to the session. I'll just add, as someone, when you hear about cryptocurrencies and you hear about all the bad things going on, terrorist financing, etc., there's no such thing as bad technology. Technology is neutral to morals. It's always bad actors who take a technology and take advantage of it. You're not going to be able to stop people from doing illegal activities. Here in Bangladesh, I think we all know money laundering is going on without cryptocurrencies in a major way already. And with crypto, at least it will be under the purview of the regulators. So I will just leave us with that thought without getting too pro, crypto and putting myself in the target. But thank you, everyone. I really appreciated all of your thoughts and your participation. I think we had a very interesting and hopefully thought-provoking discussion. And with that, I will end the session for the evening. Thank you for being a part of the Blockchain Economy Summit 2021.
Thank you. Thank you, sir.